the senator from Iowa, Joni Ernst. Good morning, Senator. How are you?
I am great, Morgan. Thanks so much for having me on today.
Well, thank you. I've been telling our audience all morning that we have a heavy topic for morning radio, but we have a very important press conference or events coming up at the Hudson Institute at 10:30, which you can find the live link on both my social media, on Senator Ernst's social media, if you would like to tune into this. But we are going to be talking, Senator Ernst, about how Hamas used rape as a weapon of war against Israeli women and American women as well on October 7th. Can you give us, our audience, a little bit of insight of what they can expect from this press conference?
Yes, I am so excited to do this with you, Morgan, and it is a very, very heavy topic. We will be together at the Hudson Institute, and we will be sharing information all through the day about how Hamas is mutilating and raping Israeli women. They are using rape as a weapon of war. And yet, you know this, Morgan, and this is why we are speaking out, is because too many of these women's organizations across this country have been silent. The UN Women, the very entity for gender equality and empowerment of women, they did not immediately and unequivocally condemn Hamas's atrocities. It's been 57, 58 days now, and it took them that long to speak about it. And so I'm upset. I know you're upset. We've got other women here in Congress that are upset about this. Sheryl Sandberg, she's not exactly on the political right, but she said last week, she said that silence is complicity. And in the face of terror, we cannot be quiet. That's why we're coming together, Morgan. So thank you for pressing on this issue.
Well, and I think it's so important, Senator Ernst, because we have so many people around the world trying to push Israel into a ceasefire, trying to stop them from defeating Hamas militarily. And we have to remind people, sadly, what happened on that day, the worst massacre of the Jewish people since the Holocaust. And one of the things that I find so troubling, and I'm so glad I saw, Senator Ernst, that you sent a letter to the UN Secretary General and demanded an investigation into why organizations, international organizations like UN Women, that are supposed to be set up to protect women, why these women delayed for almost months, for almost 2 months, actually acknowledging what happened to Jewish women on that day and condemning it. Why do you think that it takes so long to condemn rape when it happens to Jews?
Well, you just said it, Morgan. It's because these women are Jews. That's it, bottom line. And, you know, we did send a letter. It is bipartisan. So the letter that I led, it calls on the UN Secretary General to open an independent investigation into Hamas's atrocities when it comes to using rape as a weapon of war. But the UN has really abandoned any facade of being a human rights group. You can't pick and choose when you are condemning horrible, abhorrent actions. You can't do that. And yet that's what the UN did by waiting nearly 2 months to condemn these actions. So we are going to continue pushing the UN. If they are going to stand up for women's rights, they need to do it for all women, and including right now, Jewish women.
That's right. Well, thank you so much, Senator Ernst, for demanding this. It's sad that you have to demand it, but I know Jewish women like me all over the country and around the world, thank you for your leadership. I want to take a quick pivot to something that is really hot in the press and going on in the Congress, and we spoke to several people about it on the show, but this is the negotiations that appear to sort of have broken down over Ukraine, Taiwan, Israel funding, because Republicans have a simple demand that the Democrats also include some provisions to strengthen our border security. It looks like, I assume, that we're not going to get this done before the holidays, before Christmas. Where do you think we are on this, Senator Ernst, and why can't the Democrats understand that they have divided government and they're going to have to give a little to get a little?
Well, exactly. We are in divided government, and we have such a thin Republican minority, Democratic majority in the Senate that Senate Democrats know, they know this, that they have to work with Senate Republicans to get bills across the finish line. We do support Ukraine. We do support Israel. We support funding for the Indo-Pacific. The president is actually the one that put border funding in the bill that was proposed to the Senate. But we don't want to just throw money at an issue. That's not going to solve the migrant crisis that we have. So we need to change the policies here in the United States. And this is what they're really balking on. So they know they need us to get something over the finish line. Our Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell had talked to the president prior to Thanksgiving, and he told him, he said, we are not going to move a package unless we have strong policy changes for the border in this package. The Democrats must have thought he was bluffing. We are not bluffing. We do have to have policy changes. So the talks are going forward, but they're going so slow. There is not really any path to having this done prior to the Christmas break unless Democrats quickly realize, okay, we need to move forward with the Republicans' proposal. Let's get the text out as soon as possible so we can review it. But even then, it's going to take days and days to get it done. And that's if we can get it over the finish line. But I hope we can continue to do this. I know we do need to fund and we need to support these other efforts around the globe. Weapons, not welfare. That's what I believe in.
Right.
But we have to solve this border crisis issue.
Well, in talking about the border crisis, you and I were just there. Gosh, it feels like just a few weeks ago. Maybe it was a couple months ago at this point. I talked about it on the show. We were in Yuma looking at, it was amazing to see, Senator Ernst, the wide open border, where the Trump border wall ends. You can see it in Yuma. And then you see where it's just wide open. I think they had like a small barrier that they were trying to use to prevent migrants and people from the other side of the border from stealing farm equipment from American farmers in Yuma. But it was very, very easy to jump, to get around that little barricade. It would prevent you from bringing heavy machinery. And what was astounding to me, Senator Joni Ernst, is when we stood right there where the Trump's border wall ended, we looked just a few hundred yards away. The border materials that President Biden stopped using were sitting in a pile surrounded, a lock and key, by a fence. You kind of can't make this stuff up.
No, and and it's not a laughing matter, and yet we all couldn't help but laugh because here we have a fence protecting the border wall materials when the Democrats don't want a fence or a border wall to protect our own nation. So it was rather ironic, and I did push out that information. We did have a very educational visit to the border, Morgan, and thank you and Polaris for putting that together. But we recognize the difficulties that we have. And you're right, with those tiny little border barriers to stop heavy equipment and machinery from moving over the border, it seems that we're more concerned about machinery than we are about terrorists possibly coming into the country or illegal migrants coming into the country. And it's just such a bad precedence for this administration when they seem more concerned about the nitnads, just these random things than actual human lives. So we have a lot of work to do in this area, Morgan. We've got to really continue pushing, but we've put our foot down. We're not going to move forward with an aid package if it doesn't provide for our own national security.
Well, good for you. We certainly appreciate you standing strong. One thing that I have to talk to you about before we go is, of course, the most important political news is that right after the holidays, we're going to have the Iowa caucuses and then the New Hampshire primary. We know your governor has endorsed Ron DeSantis. Just yesterday, the governor of New Hampshire, Sununu, endorsed Nikki Haley. President Trump is still leading by a wide margin in the polls, but you probably don't want to do this, but do you want to offer us any predictions on what's going to go down in Iowa, or do you want to just give us any insights to anybody who hasn't had the ability to actually see one of these caucuses in person?
Right. No, I'm happy to talk about it, and I welcome all of our candidates into Iowa. Trump does have a commanding lead in Iowa, and we see Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis running neck and neck, but it is a fascinating process. The Republicans will caucus in Iowa on January 15th. You must be at the caucus to cast a vote. There are no absentee ballots. You have to go into your polling place. You have to physically be present. So it's going to be exciting, folks. Just watch your televisions for January 15th.
I can't wait. I've been there to the caucuses before. It is really, like, for a political junkie, it is absolutely fun. Well, thank you, Senator Ernst. Again, you'll see her live with me at 10:30 at the Hudson Institute.